Thanks.
Do you want Eric to be on the screen?
I was just saving you from watching me eat a donut.
Oh, gosh.
However, coffee, you can suffer that.
Cheers. So, well, except for I have a pretty sad, I have a pretty well-used mug.
There we go. Toast to all.
It's 9 a.m. Do you want to get started?
Okay, I think we'll start. Cindy, we're on and recording, is that right?
That is correct.
Awesome, great. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. My name is Jim McCann. I'm the city's interim city manager. Been helping the city for a little over 2 months now, as the city is in transition from our former city manager, Mark Prestwich, until the city retains a new permanent city manager. By the way, that process is underway, and there's some very good candidates being considered. Today is the first of our 3 educational opportunities, forums, wherein the city staff are going to just provide some background on infrastructure needs in the city, and specifically on the specific funding mechanism the City Council has identified as one of the tools to help us address those infrastructure needs, and that's a general obligation bond, the form of municipal finance to finance different improvements, in this case, utility improvements. We'll talk about that in a sec. But I just want to tell you a little bit about me. I am a retired city manager with more than 35 years of experience in various municipal services in different cities around the state. And the last part of my career, about 22 years, was as city manager, both here in the Napa Valley up in Calistoga and then down in Marin County. And I say that just to provide some basis for my next comment, which is that the city of St. Helena has some significant infrastructure needs, but the city of St. Helena has some very good plans too to address those needs. In my time in municipal service, I've encountered infrastructure needs, capital improvement program desires, infrastructure financing deficiencies, and have identified and worked on ways to address those. What I can tell you is that the city of St. Helena, its staff, its city council, and its community recognizes that there are infrastructure needs in the community. These are long-lasting deficiencies and demands. The community is more than 150 years old. There are infrastructure elements which aren't quite 150 years old, but they are well beyond their service life. We've had a number of community groups appointed by the city councils over the years look at our infrastructure needs, and they have all concluded that there is great demand, great need for improvement and renovation, and all of those types of efforts require funding that comes from a number of different sources. The City Council correctly has identified that and has directed the staff to undertake the improvement to our infrastructure and to address the funding needs. Those funding needs come from several different buckets, if you will. Utility rates are one. You're all familiar with those. In fact, we've got a process underway right now to address our utility rates. They always come up for renewal, and generally speaking, they have an increase. This time around, I'm sure we will have an increase because we have many improvements to take. The City Council also recognized, by virtue of the work done by our advisory groups, that we need additional funds beyond that can be raised through the utility rates in order to make meaningful progress on the infrastructure needs we have before us. And that's what brought the thought of a general obligation bond. That's a bond that will raise funds for us so that we can concurrently attack more elements of our infrastructure needs. So both the infrastructure needs through the utility rates and, if voters approve the general obligation bond, through this additional source of funds, another bucket of funds to attack our needs. I'll just say that our own citizens have identified more than $150 million, $150 million of infrastructure and facility needs that our small town has. And that's over the next 30 years. That's a lot of money. We're not going to do it overnight, but we do need to work on it diligently, regularly, with reasonable funding. The general obligation bond is one of those tools that will help us to do so. And that's why the City Council, I think, correctly identified it as a mechanism to pursue. That's a little background. I'd like April Mitz, our Administrative Services Director, to just walk through some of the fundamentals and some of the specific elements of the general obligation bond. This is all information that we have presented in public meetings to the City Council over the last several months. So it's all available on our website. If you look at those who want to see the Council's deliberations, it's also available on the website, as April will point out, for you to look at in different forms. There's lots of links that provide excellent information, all generated by city staff, as well as by our advisory groups made up of citizens in our own community who've come to, I think, the correct conclusion that we need to attack infrastructure very firmly, and we need to have secure sources of funding to do so, one of which includes the general obligation bond. April, can you walk through that, please?
Great, thank you very much. And I'll start, I have a brief PowerPoint presentation that just goes over some of the informational items regarding Measure H. Let me get to my next screen. So what we're going to cover this morning is just a quick introduction, which Jim McCann has covered for us, some background to how we got to where we are right now with the Measure H Go Bond being on the ballot measure, some frequently asked questions, estimated Go Bond costs, and then also if there's where you can find additional information for the Go Bond. So the background, as City Manager McCann had mentioned, is this did not happen overnight. We did not get to where we are today without a lot of work by the community and by staff members getting us to this point. In 2018, the City Council did appoint a SHAPE committee, and what they did is it was a St. Helena Asset Planning Committee. So they looked at all of the city's assets that are related to the general fund and just kind of came up with an overall, what are the needs to be able to fix, maintain, and repair the current city infrastructure. In 2020, the City Council did authorize a Financing Civic Infrastructure Task Force, and that report did come out on several ways that we could look at potentially financing the critical needs that we had. In 2021, we started a underground utility master plan. 2021 council goals did identify finance. Part of the City Council goals was for staff to identify financing and revenue options for the city to address city infrastructure deficiencies. In 2021, the city did embark on an opinion research on revenue options. And then further in 2021, you can see where everything's kind of coming to the height, getting to the place where we did place the Measure H bond on the ballot, or sorry, Measure H, which is the Go Bond on the ballot. So we did have two different special workshops with council recommendations for what should go on the Go Bond ballot measure. On February 8th, the City Council initiated the proceedings to place the Go Bond measure on the ballot. And then on February 22nd, the City Council did authorize the placement of the Go Bond measure on the ballot. And those last two items are administrative requirements that we have to do to actually get an item on the ballot. So Measure H in and of itself, so as the ballots are being mailed out, I believe next week, the question that is actually on the ballot is as follows: St. Helena water service protection to protect local water quality supply, improve drought resilience by repairing or replacing St. Helena's 1940s era drinking water system, including pipes, aging, deteriorating drinking water, stormwater, and sewage infrastructure, keeping sewage, pollution, trash, chemicals from local rivers, creeks, and streams, protecting safe, sustainable local water sources. Shall the City of St. Helena's measure authorizing $19,150,000 in bonds, levying approximately $14.82 per 100,000 of assessed value, raising about $1.2 million annually while bonds are outstanding, requires citizens' oversight to be adopted. So it's either yes on the bonds or no on the bonds. And I will go into a little bit more information later on what the actual cost of the bond is and what that could potentially look like for each of the properties within the City of St. Helena city limits. The overall objectives of Measure H, there's several things that are folded into Measure H, and they include critical stormwater projects, recycled water projects, which are otherwise known as purple pipe, and then also select number of wastewater projects and water projects. And the water projects were specifically designed to really hone in on what are some of our big water issues right now as far as water waste. We know that with our aging infrastructure, we do have several times per month, we have either substantial leaks and or breaks in our water pipes and water mains that we want to get addressed quickly. So that way it actually will improve the amount of water that's available to the residents and to all water customers. And then the second part of that too is that as we get some of those leaks and leaks fixed, it actually helps us maintain the pressure flow that goes through the pipes that actually help in our fire suppression services, which, as we all experience very close to us with the recent glass fires and LNU fires, how important that is. So the objectives of the Measure H bond measure is to replace over 20,000 feet of drinking water pipes to ensure clean and safe drinking water. First and foremost, we want to make sure that everything is safe that's coming in, into our homes and our businesses and out of the tap. Replace almost 5,000 feet of water pipes for greater capacity for fire suppression. So those are the areas where we want to make sure that we have the best water flow possible if a fire is to occur. Update aging city sewer system to prevent sewage overflow. Repair the stormwater system to keep pollutants out of local rivers, groundwater, creeks, and streams. Expand drought resiliency projects to reduce the need for water restrictions and penalties. And some of this is incorporated in the recycled or purple pipe. And preserve St. Helena's water supply for future generations. Some FAQs about what is actually a GO bond. So a GO bond is a general obligation bond, or a GO bond, and they're used to fund projects such as the replacement or renovation of city infrastructure and facilities, and it also includes the enhancement of fire flow facilities, repairs to drinking water lines, improvements to sewer and stormwater systems, and drought resiliency projects. The loan repayment comes from a tax on all taxable property located within the City of St. Helena city boundaries. One of the next FAQs, and all of this is available on our website, is what does the passage of Measure H mean for St. Helena? If this bond passage, it will give the funding needed to confront the water crisis by making improvements and providing much needed maintenance to the city's water infrastructure, and also protecting local waterways from pollution. As City Manager McCann mentioned earlier, the projects that are included in the GO bond are not all of the city projects. It is $19.1 million of $153 million. So it is a very small portion of it. And what was done is we really looked at what are our immediate needs, what are things that we can do to start fast tracking the process of some of these really critical infrastructure projects. And some of them, such as stormwaters, do not currently have any funding mechanism besides the general fund. The second thing is, if it does pass, the completion of Measure H funded projects will protect property values and also preserve St. Helena's water supply for future generations. Some additional FAQs is what improvement projects would the measure fund? So the Measure H will repair and renovate. Oh, I believe I might have had a double. I think I might have asked this question twice. So I will go ahead and skip that question. So what happens if Measure H does not pass? So St. Helena will not be able to fund necessary repair projects on a short-term basis. The pipes that deliver clean drinking water are currently over 70 years old. They are deteriorating quickly and could fail at any moment, leaving residents without a stable water supply. And we have seen that, I believe, even last week, we had a pretty substantial water leak that we had to do some emergency repairs on. And then these repairs and upgrades are essential to securing St. Helena's critical infrastructure and providing the resiliency necessary for wildfire fighting capabilities. And again, this goes back to the pressure in the lines, making sure that we have that ability. Some more FAQs is how can these funds be spent? So the state law does require that funds can only be spent on making improvements to critical city infrastructure as identified in the object and purpose of the bonds. So we are limited to what is included in that language in the ordinance, as well as the bond, the Measure H language. Funds cannot be used to purchase equipment or pay for operations and maintenance, but it's really to address some deficiencies in the infrastructure. And then in addition, a local independent citizens oversight committee will be established to ensure that bond funds are properly spent. So that is something that we want to make sure that the community at large knows that we are going to have the citizen oversight committee. And what part of that committee is that we will be reporting out to them exactly the project costs, what we've spent on it, what we utilize Measure H funds for. What will Measure H cost? So Measure H authorizes $19.5 million in bonds. The average tax rate per property owner is estimated to be $14.82 per $100,000 of assessed valuation per year. It's important to note that assessed valuation is different than I'm going blank on the technical term right now, but assessed valuation is basically what's at the county assessor's office. So that means at the time you purchased your home or your business, anything like that, you paid a certain dollar amount on your home. That is considered, that's the base point of your assessed valuation. Every year, there might be limitations on how much your assessed valuation goes up. It is typically capped around 2%, so it cannot go any higher than that each year, except for if there's been any major improvements on the house that have increased the value of the house. So your assessed valuation is completely different than if you put your house or your business on the market in today's date. On today's date, your assessed valuation, maybe when you bought the property, is $300,000. Maybe it's gone up to $350,000 over the natural course of the years. But if you were to put your market on the home if you put your home on the market today, maybe the valuation on your home is now $1 million. Your assessed valuation until that home sells is still that lower dollar amount. So that's something really important to recognize. So for instance, if your house is worth, your assessed valuation is worth $500,000, you just multiply that $14.82 by 5, and that will give you what your average tax rate is. And it's also important to note that average tax rate is over a 30-year period because the bonds would be issued over 30 years. And then how many votes are needed for Measure H to pass? 6.67% of all St. Helena votes cast must vote in favor of Measure H to pass. So that's something that's important to note as well. So the current bond projects, so these were the bonds that were included, or the projects that were included in the bonds. And we did really try to look at and isolate the projects that really would give us the most bang for the buck and really make sure that we are focused on the St. Helena community as a whole. The stormwater system improvements, there are currently no funding mechanisms besides the general fund right now to fund these projects. So you'll see the first 2 items in blue are the stormwater projects. The next 4 items are water-related projects. And again, we are looking specifically at projects that it would be helpful to have the money sooner rather than later to be able to start these repairs and really make sure that we're not wasting water through leakage. We're making sure that we have proper water coming through our water pipes and that we are delivering safe and reliable water, as well as make sure that we have those fire flows necessary. There's 2 sewer projects that are added in here. Is the first is the high priority replacement of gravity sewage collection system. And then the second is the Cronulla lift station improvements. And then the last item that you'll see is a wastewater treatment plant, recycled pipeline and pump station. As a lot of people are aware, we're in the process of doing some significant upgrades to our wastewater treatment plant right now. One of the exciting things about that project is it is going to be ready for tertiary treatment, which is purple pipe. And then adding this 1.7 million to the Go Bond project would allow the city to actually start being able to place some of that pipe so we can actually use the tertiary treatment. And right now, again, similar to stormwater, there's no current funding mechanism for the wastewater recycled pipeline purple pipe. So some items, so quick overview of the cost of the bonds. We did make some assumptions when we looked at what the potential costs are, knowing that there are things that might, there are things that might vary, such as interest rates going up, the total project cost. So the assumptions that we made for the scenarios that are going to be presented is we did look at a 30-year term. We did look at layering debt, and what that means is the debt, we won't take out $19.5 million at one time. We will actually layer it. So we'll take the first tranche of debt, we'll start spending that down, we'll take a second tranche of debt, spend that down, and then the third tranche of debt and spend that down. And so there are going to be 3 different debt issuances, and you'll see in a chart that will be coming up how that actually puts into play as far as your average tax rate. We did assume a 4% annual assessed valuation growth. So that's a combination of both just the normal growth in assessed valuation, as well as when properties are sold, we will see an incline on it. That number can change from year to year. For instance, the current fiscal year that we're in, it increased by 3.4% and not 4%. So we did just try to take an average of a 4%, which is very conservative. We did look at a declining tax rate, which means once those 3 tranches of debt have been issued, after that, they steadily decline, and that will be shown in a chart that's coming up. And then we did look at the market rate plus 50% basis points, just to kind of give us an estimate of what the actual rate is going to look like when the bonds are issued. Again, that will really depend on what the market rate is looking at the time. So here's our bond cost. And it is mentioned, what we did is the Go Bond, when this was presented to City Council in several different workshops, we did look at 3 different Go Bond amounts to see what would be the best to put through. And so you'll see the Go Bond amount of $10 million, $15 million, and $20 million. And so, as you know, we went with the bond before the taxpayers is more in the closer to the $20 million range. So you're looking at a first-year tax rate. So once the bonds are issued, this is estimated to be in fiscal year 25. The first-year tax rate is 44 cents per $100,000 of assessed valuation. You'll see the average tax rate at the 20 million bond was $15.22 per 100,000 of assessed valuation, and in your maximum tax rate of $26.99. So what that is saying, at the highest mark when you issued that third tranche of rates for that 1-year period, you would pay an estimated $26.99 per $100,000 of assessed valuation at the top rate. Know that these numbers are a little bit different than what's in the actual Go Bond language, because again, this was at 20 million. The Go Bond is just before the voters is at 19.5 million. So that's why you see a little bit lower average tax rate. So here's where you can see via a chart what this looks like. You really want to look at this blue line, since the measure in front of the voters is at closer to that $20 million rate. So here you'll see the first bond being issued in 2025, second bond in 2028, third bond in 2032. So you can see here, according to the blue line, where your average tax rate slightly increases year over year. So this is where you get that maximum tax rate. And then you'll see the tax rate over the years actually declines over the total 30-year period. And again, the center line here is where we're looking at that average tax rate. Again, it's going to, I'm sorry, the bottom, where you're looking at the maximum, where you see the maximum of $26.22 when you're looking at the peak up here. And then you'll see your average is really more towards that $15.22 when you look over the life of the bond. So where can you find more information? This is a lot of information. It's been years in the making. Again, we started out in 2018. So if you go to the city's homepage, so it's cityofsthelena.org, everything's spelled out. First, you're going to click on where it says your government at the top. When you select your government, you'll get a drop down and you'll want to look at the Go Bond measure, and you'll click right on this Go Bond measure, and that will bring you up to a pretty comprehensive page that actually has FAQs, there's more FAQs in there than what we covered today. There's also a history of everything that we've done to date. There's also links to all of the documents that were produced by every single one of those citizen committees that we had. So it is a lot of information. We are planning on, as we get more information, we will actually upload it to this page. So this is a good page to go to and to reference, and it is a working page. So that is the end of the presentation, and then both myself, City Manager McCann, Eric Jensen, who is our Assistant Public Works Director, Mandy Kellogg, who's our Assistant Admin Services Director, we are all available to answer any questions the public may have.
Thank you, April. Very good. Just want to say a couple more things. One, April, maybe in a moment you could just summarize for folks, if you could do the math, what a typical cost might be to a resident, maybe in year one. You're talking about the assessed value and that tax rate. If you just ran a typical $500,000 assessed value, what that might be. But let me just say first, I think it's obvious from my comments, from April's presentation, and then from all of the data that we've provided on the city's website, all of the studies that have been done over the years, that there are some real demands, and that the projects that we've listed to arrive at that almost $20 million price tag are each one of them very important and very essential for the viability and the security of our infrastructure system for the city. The general obligation bond, the GO bond, will provide funding to allow us to move forward much more quickly than if we simply relied on the one funding source of utility rates. If we are unable to secure the additional funding through the GO bond, that doesn't mean we're not going to attack these things. We will, but it'll just be at a slower pace as the funding is available to us to address all of the many competing needs that the water and wastewater utility rates have before them. I want to thank the City Council, both the current City Council and the previous City Councils, as well as the staff and the community for their attention to this and for their vision and direction to address these things. Utility rates and debt issuances and tax measures are not easy things, but they're the responsible thing to do, and the City Council has recognized that and has directed us to move forward with this. And we hope that there's a compelling case for you all to participate more directly through property taxes to support this government or this general obligation bond to allow us to undertake these things. The City Council has identified infrastructure repair and financial stability and security as primary goals, and those are the marching orders that the city staff has, and we're pursuing those now. I can also assure you that even without this general obligation bond, there's a lot of work being done. Mr. Jansen in the Public Works Department is extremely busy. We've got dozens of capital improvement projects underway right now, some of them in construction, others in design, others waiting for financing. A generational project, the wastewater treatment plant, is underway. It's a $19 million project just by itself, and that's a substantial project. And there are others, many, many others on our list that are in the works ready to go, and others ready for planning and design. Money is the lubrication that makes all this machine work, and we clearly need more of it. And I believe the general obligation bond will help us with that. So with that, April, if you can tell us the answer to my question, that would be fantastic. And then maybe we can open it up and see if folks in the community have any questions that perhaps we can answer.
Perfect. Thank you. So for the tax rates, what it will look like, you have your first year tax rate. It will ramp up into your maximum tax rate, and then it will level off. So you're looking at the first year tax rate, knowing that only one bond issuance is going to happen. And based off of the information, it would be $2.20 for the first year that would be assessed onto your property tax bill. If you look at the average of $14.82, it would be $74.10 per year. That would be, on average, that would be on your property tax bill. And again, this is based on a $500,000 valuation. So you could adjust that up or down just depending on the valuation of your home. And then if you look at the maximum estimated tax rate of $26, it would be $130 a year at that maximum rate that would be added to a property tax bill based on a $500,000 valuation. If you are curious about your assessed valuation, if you look at your property tax bill, it will actually include that information on your property tax bill.
Super. Thank you very much. So it looks like we're looking at a typical range of somewhere between $75 and maybe $135 as an increase to address these the debt issuance and the funds to make the improvements.
Correct.
Great. Thank you. Good to have that context. Super. Cindy, do we have any folks who'd like to offer comment or ask a question?
We do. Chris, you can unmute yourself. And
thank you. This is Chris Warner, and some of you know I'm the co-leader of the St. Helena Fire Safe Council, and a couple questions that are related to this very good presentation. One is that I think it's important that to get a little bit more detail on how this will help increase the amount of recycled water actually available to people in the city during our drought conditions. Because what I had noticed immediately, obviously, this helps with the older aging pipes, but it also, I think it's very important to note that it helps with recycled water being available during the drought conditions. And then secondly, more to the wildfire situation, I understand this will also help fire flow for wildfire situations. Am I correct on that? Maybe April or Jim can answer that.
Yeah, thank you, Chris, for the questions. Yes, there are improvements to the overall system that will improve both flow and reliability, which are essential for fire flow, and then also funds to improve and extend the reclaimed water system, which presently really does not exist by virtue of our inability to do so because of the age and technology of our current plant. Our new wastewater treatment plant will be able to produce water that will be sufficient in quality for reclaimed use, for irrigation of landscape, vineyards, etc. And so we're very excited about that.
And I think all of us that went through last year and maybe this year's drought are very excited about that as well. Thank you.
You're welcome. Cindy?
I'm looking and there's no hands raised.
Perhaps we've answered all of the questions.
I think Chris has one more question for you.
Super.
Chris, you can unmute yourself.
Just unmuting. Thank you. Sorry. The other thing that I think is very notable from my perspective personally in St. Helena, from a kind of just a property tax payer, is that am I correct that these municipal bonds are usually the lowest possible interest rate you could have for financing versus some other form of financing like enterprise financing or financing strictly off of rates to a limited number of customers? So am I correct that this GO bond is actually also designed by the council and by the experts to provide what would be the lowest available interest rate on a financing of this size?
Chris, you are correct that municipal financing, there are many different vehicles for it, does have advantages, tax advantages to investors, and consequently, the financing and the costs involved in the financing are generally, well, not generally, are regularly less than commercial financing. And we've got a whole team that assists the city in financial advising and bond counsels, and they're expert in these fields. And so we routinely receive very favorable ratings. And then we also have the opportunity to refinance measures as during the life of the measure. And so some folks have asked the question, gosh, I heard Chairman Powell just speak yesterday and take action to raise the prime interest rate, and that will surely affect rates for other types of debt, including municipal debt. Should we wait? And I think the answer to that is, well, you could, but we've got very definite needs. We expect that the rates that will be in place when we take down the first tranche will still be attractive. And if those rates become more attractive in future, we have the ability to refinance. We've done that with debt issuances in the past and have realized substantial savings. So that's a regular measure that we can pursue. It's a very good question.
And am I correct that if you did this through some more limited financing sources, like just rates from water users, the possibility is that those rates for borrowing from the water users directly might likely be higher than what you're doing with a general obligation bond. Am I correct on that, or am I missing something?
No, I think you're correct. And again, it goes to the actual debt instrument that is used. And so they have different interest rates, different criteria from coverage and cash flow demonstration. So there's a whole series of tools and options that we have. We don't know, we can't tell you today what that interest rate is going to be or what the covenants will be, but we do know that a general obligation bond is a tool that generally has very attractive terms and interest rates for us. And is frankly one of the tools that we can use given our financial capabilities and limitations and demands. And so being able to have a dedicated funding stream, which will come from the tax measure, is imperative and is extremely attractive to the debt community. So it will be an attractive issuance if we're able to do so.
And one final related question, and I'll get off of my questions, let anybody else join in.
Sure. No, they're good questions.
My understanding also is that nothing in this bond measure precludes the city or citizens from coming in and proposing additional rate design changes for allocation of costs of future projects, basically, because I understand there's a rate design study that's going to come out from the city and may offer other options down the road that aren't in any way affected or restricted by what's in this bond issuance. Am I correct on that?
Yes, and I'll have April maybe speak to that in a sec. But what I can tell you is that, as I mentioned at the beginning, we have a lot of demands. And so, north of $150 million in demands. And those are infrastructure. Those are not, some new facility that we don't presently have. They're underground utilities, storm drain pipes, water pipes, sewer pipes, lift stations, pumps, tanks, reservoirs, all kinds of stuff that excite engineers and that we need. And so there's no shortage of needs. And in order to address these needs, we need many different sources of funds. Otherwise, our capability to address them is just really diminished, and we have to go much more slowly. Unfortunately, and we're not in a position to do that because pipes continue to deteriorate. They don't wait for us. They're on their own time frame of failure, and so we want to get in front of them. But April, can you maybe speak a little bit more to the rate structure that's coming up and how the improvements we've identified here either do or do not find a place in that rate structure, and if there are other opportunities for us to fund them through rates?
Yeah, I can definitely address that. So as many people know, we are currently in a utility rate study right now. We're at the very preliminary part of the rate study where it's a lot of data transfer over to our consultant that we're working with. Early on in the process, when we looked at the GO bonds and the different funding mechanism for different projects that we have within the city, we did identify that the amount of water and wastewater that's on this bond is, I believe it's $6.9 million. If my memory serves me correct, it's about $6.9 million. But those were kind of the most critical items that we looked at. It definitely does not encompass all of the water projects that we are looking to get done, as well as knowing that our current water treatment facility does need some updates as well. So what we did look at, and this is all on the city's website, which I can actually share my screen. So here's a live look on where you can get to the GO bonds. So if you go to our government or your government, go to Measure H GO bonds. If you scroll down on the page, again, there's a lot of information here. We initially looked at, hey, here's what project types we're looking at, and then what are the different various funding mechanisms we could potentially utilize. Down below, we look at the total CIP projects in these categories. This does not address all of the infrastructure, but this is kind of the more immediate needs. You'll see all these other water projects here. So instead of being about $3.9 million, which is in the GO bond, there's actually it's about $38 million in totality for water projects that have currently been identified. And so the other projects are the projects that are actually going to be looked at being addressed through the rate study that we're looking at. So I just kind of wanted to point out where some of that information is that you can see it on our website. And I do want to touch base on the funding mechanisms that you had asked about. You are correct. There's the GO bond funding mechanism, which the security for the payment of the GO bond is actually the dedication of property tax dollars. When we look at the utility rates, so you look at your water, wastewater enterprise systems, those would also be a bond issue, and the surety for those bonds are actually so what you're saying that we're committing to do to be able to pay the debt service on those bonds is actually from the rates that are collected from the ratepayers. And one of the third funding mechanism that the city does currently have available would be debt financing, almost more like a private placement, but it is very favorable. We have done some refunding of water, wastewater debt. We've done it in private placement, but we've had such favorable terms lately, we've really taken advantage of it. But what we could do is we could borrow, and it's similar to if you borrow against your home. We're placing city property as collateral for that debt that we're taking out. So we are really limited on that because it's similar to the assessed valuation, is we can't just say, hey, we think this is what it's worth now. It's basically based on what our insurance coverage is for those assets, and then we can only take out debt on what they deem as essential assets. So right now, the essential asset that we have, we primarily hang our hat on is the fire station. We are really limited because some institutions will not lend to you based off of like a library, parks and rec building, even the current city hall that we're in right now, because it's not considered an essential building. One of the things that we think we might be able to borrow against now is the library, because we did add a very large generator, so it is considered a backup facility for us. So it really does limit the amount of money that we can borrow. And I believe the last time we looked at it, it was right around, I think, the $10 to $15 million amount mark. And again, that does not even come close to addressing all the needs that we have for even just civic, non-enterprise funds projects. So I hope that helps provide a little more context as well.
Yes, it does. Thanks so much, April.
All right, we have an additional public comment. Leslie, you can unmute yourself.
Good morning. Thank you for doing this forum. It's very informational. And on information, I'm curious on, can you comment how many people are on this Zoom? Sometimes information is hard to get out, and I appreciate these forums.
There are 8 in attendance.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And I'll note, Leslie, that this is not the only opportunity. We thought we'd do one here virtually so that folks who are interested in connecting this way can do so. And then we have 2 additional informational meetings that we'll hold live and in person, like in the good old days. April, can you tell us when those are and where they will be, please?
Yes, so the next informational meeting will be next Wednesday from 5 to 6 p.m. and it will be at the Carnegie Building. And then following that on Saturday, May 21st from 11 to 12, we will also have another informational meeting in person at the Carnegie Building. We are currently sending all that information out via our e-news, our e-blast. Priya and Cindy have both been working to get it out to our various community groups. In addition, we are recording the session today, and we will be adding that to the Measure H informational page. So it can be accessed 24 hours a day, 24/7. Anyone at any time of the day can actually access it. So we are trying to get the word out as much as possible, and we appreciate anyone else who's helping us get the word out.
And I think we'll also you're welcome. I think we'll also be taking advantage of the good questions that are coming in and supplementing our information, the frequently asked questions and answers on our website. So some of the questions that we've gotten today and those that we may receive either in person or electronically will supplement the website so folks can go there and get more information. But I would just urge people who have an interest in this to really take a little bit of time. On the website, there's just a ton of really excellent information, some really good work done by residents on our advisory groups and good work done by City Council, current and past, and our staff. So there's lots and lots of information there. Any other folks who would like to offer a comment, Cindy?
There are no other raised hands.
Okay, well then perhaps we can wrap it up for today. And anyone who tunes in to watch this in a recorded form, if you do have questions or thoughts, please do send them in. Send them to the city clerk. I would say that's probably the best way so we can capture them and then distribute them, and we will respond and we'll post those the information on our website. Thank you all who tuned in, and thank you staff for all your good work on this, and for the city council for their good direction. That's it. We'll see you next time. Bye, guys.